started. Good morning to everyone. My name is Erin Ellis. I'm the financial educator at the Philadelphia Federal Credit Union. Here we go. Start sharing my screen with you. Right, so while we are getting started, I'm curious today if you are here, is this the first time that you have attended a webinar with me? So just take a second to answer that poll question. Have you been here with me before, or is today your first day? Let me know. So quick poll, shouldn't take too long. Get things rolling. All right, so I'm gonna close up the poll. I know it's quick, but just let me know if you've been here before, if today is your first webinar with me. Okay, great. So tons of new people today. Welcome. Really happy to have you here. I am Erin Ellis. I've been with Philadelphia Federal Credit Union for almost 7 years now, and been having a lot of fun webinars. I have another one coming up next week on saving and planning for a mortgage. So really those beginning stages. So please check out our website and register for that if you're interested. And then of course, next month, there'll be another couple coming up. Great. So one more quick question about who is here today. I am curious if you are here as, and so another poll popped up for you. I'm here as a high school student, or I'm here as a parent of a high school student, or I am here as an adult going to college myself. So I'm just curious, take a second and let me know who is here so that it will just help our conversation a little bit in determining the direction. Wonderful, thank you. Looks like so far a lot of parents of high school students and adults. So no high school students, which not a surprise, they're in school right now, right? Okay, great. So if anybody else wants to get in the last couple seconds to just choose in the poll, do you have a high school student that you're looking for college, or are you an adult going yourself? All right, so I'm gonna close up this poll. Great, fairly, pretty good split for both of those groups. So excellent, okay. All right, so again, everyone's in listen only mode and you can ask a question in the question box. I already see one, which is great. So the handouts are on the dashboard, and if you open the PDF files, then you should be able to save it. So you can open it and then save that file. Okay, great. Well, Heather's back, welcome. Welcome. All right, great. So we're gonna just dive right into this. So a tiny bit about Philadelphia Federal Credit Union. Pfcu is a not-for-profit financial cooperative. We are owned by our members, which generally looks like we are not charging the same amount of fees associated with commercial banking. So it's actually usually cheaper to do business with a credit union, and that's because we have a whole different setup. The profits that we make are returned to our members in the forms of lower fees and better rates. Okay, so this is the plan for today. We're going to look at, and the last time I did this was in the late fall, early winter. And so it was a different point of the school year, because at that point, folks were looking for, starting to fill out the FAFSA. At this part in the spring, this is where we're starting to get acceptance letters, starting to get financial aid offers. And so we're going to focus a little more heavily on the second half of this. And I think one of the most useful things that I have for you is the resources, and that's the paying for college resources. And we're going to take a couple of minutes at the end to just look through that together, because you can't learn everything there is to know about financial aid and FAFSA and all of this in an hour. It's impossible. But I will give you some really good resources. So I take a lot of time to curate the information, to sort of break it down so that you have one document instead of all of the internet to dig through to sort of find some of these answers that you might need for questions that you have. All right, so we're going to start looking at college. Is it the right option? Why are we considering it? Then looking at how we're preparing for those costs, figuring out what they are. We're going to look at the FAFSA, types of federal student aid, and financial aid offers. So, still looking at, the why of college, we're looking at unemployment rates and earnings by educational attainment. And so this is from 2019 from the US Bureau of Labor and Statistics. So you can sort of see here, the more education you have, the less likely you are to be unemployed. And the more education you have, the higher median earnings folks have. So we're still looking at a place where generally education is leading towards higher earnings and less unemployment. I'd be really interested to see this data for, and I'm sure it exists for 2020, how education levels have impacted unemployment during COVID. I have a feeling it looks fairly similar to this, but yeah, to be determined. So it's still really a good option for a lot of people to go to school. Wanting to think about the student debt and how much we're going to be paying back. And so the average student debt for 2019 was $30,000 upon graduation. And this is actually, the screen is not changing. Thank you for the feedback. There we go. I think that worked. Okay, you should see a slide that says why college now. And so the average student debt for 2019, thank you for the feedback, is $30,000. Is actually higher than that in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is the second worst in student debt, which means we have the most. So a general guideline when it comes to how much you should take out in student loans is that the student loan debt should not exceed your expected first-year salary after graduating. So if you're going to be a social worker making $40,000 to $45,000, you should be looking at not having student loan debt exceeding that. And again, just a general guideline. And it's good to think about, do I want to pay $300 a month after graduation, or what the reality of that is? Okay, so next we're looking at preparing. So what is the true cost of college, and how can we prepare for it? What can we do to save or to find a way to get ahead? So let's talk about some options for this. Okay, so preparations in terms of cost. There are two sort of areas of costs when it comes to college. And there's the things we always think about, the tuition, the room and board, the fees, and those are fairly straightforward and usually made fairly accessible on the school's website. You can usually just Google these things. There's also a lot of indirect expenses, and these are books and supplies, and we can, get some estimate. There are personal expenses, transportation, and so this is an area, these indirect expenses are a little harder to account for and certainly can make or break the student's budget in terms of finding success and being able to stay in school. So it's a really good idea to think and plan for these expenses ahead of time. And there's some good calculators, and I'm going to share with you a budgeting tool that can help you plan for this. But imagine you have a study group and you meet every week at a cafe. Well, you might have that additional expense of needing to buy a coffee because you are going to need to be there with friends. And so these indirect expenses they can make up half or more of the cost of attending some colleges is one statistic, and this is from a report from Uspire. And so they're looking at college affordability. These indirect expenses are something you can plan for, know they're going to come up, and sort of make sure you have that money set aside, because those are not necessarily things that will be covered by loans and grants and scholarships. So about 80% of college students surveyed said that they encountered some sort of unexpected indirect expense at least once in the last school year. And as we saw the last year or two, there are all sorts of weird, unexpected things that it's really hard to predict. So if you can't afford supplies and food while attending college, talk to someone. This is a really good piece of advice. If you're worried about paying for basics, contact your school's financial aid office and explain the situation. Personally, I had a friend that was struggling one year, and she went to the financial aid office and said, "What can you do?" And they found some money for her. So there's nothing guaranteed, but schools may have emergency funds that they can make available to students who have the need. They can work with local transit systems to help with commuting costs. So, don't suffer in the darkness is the advice from all of this. Okay, that being said, let's look at the actual cost of this tuition. So when it comes to the cost of college, we have the sticker price, and this is, you might see UPenn's sticker price is $80,000, but that is not what people usually pay. What people usually pay at a school is the net price. So this is the sticker price, right? The published price minus the grants and scholarships. And these grants can come from the federal government, from the state, they can come from the school. We're going to look at a little more later on at what these are. But the net price is really important because that's the actual cost of college for you. Just like our net paycheck, I'm not really concerned with what the sticker price is or my gross. I want to know how much is it going to cost at the end of the day, and that's what the net price will give you. So on the bottom of this slide, you can see there is a link, and you will have this in the resources, but there is a link to a net price calculator. Each school has to have this. So they tell you based on what your family makes, how many kids are going to college at the time, what is the true price? What is it most likely to be for your family? So they're available on all of the college's websites, but you also can access all of this information. And I'm going to give you a little example here to see, because I find this really useful as a parent myself, to say, let's look at the difference. And this is the net price. And so this is from a website called Tuition Tracker, which I have linked on the slide for you. But it shows the difference. If you're looking at Temple and you have a family income of $0 to $30,000, you can see that the sticker price is $34,000, but the net price that people usually pay is $19,000. That's very different than UPenn. So if we look over on the right side of this chart, University of Pennsylvania, your family income is $0 to $30,000, while the sticker price is $80,000. On average, students who fall into that family income category will pay less than $9,000 in tuition. So these are going to be really important things to think about when you're making these decisions. And we're going to look at the specifics for your school when we look at the financial aid offers, which will be a little later on in the hour. Okay. Great. As far as preparing for the cost, you can prepare for the cost by savings. And one of the best ways to do this for most families is the 529 College and Career Savings Plan. And so in Pennsylvania, it's called the PA 529. I did a webinar with someone from the Treasury and a couple of other folks last month, and I actually linked to resources for saving for children. It's one of the handouts that's here on this webinar. So if you have questions or want more information, maybe you're on the earlier end of the child's age, or you're looking for yourself, how can you save before college? The 529 is a great option. And so there are some really useful resources on that Saving for Children PDF. So 529 is an investment account. It's an educational investment account. Your growth and your withdrawals are tax-free for qualified expenses. So my money can grow and then I can take it out plus everything I've earned, and I'm never paying any more on that money in terms of taxes. So you can choose almost any state plan. All you need is $10 to start. And you choose from a preset of investment options. So it's not a difficult thing to sign up for the Pennsylvania 529 if you're interested. You only need $10, and then you can choose investments based on your knowledge of investments. They have some portfolios for you to choose from, or you can choose based on the child's age. And so it makes it a lot easier. For me, this is what I did. I said, you know, I have a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old. I know the year they're graduating high school. So I'm going to say, I'm going to invest in this plan, and I'm going to choose their age-based plan. It's a target enrollment date investment option. So again, more questions on this, you can check out those resources, but we won't get into this too much more. All right. Going to transition to the FAFSA now, and we will talk about this. I did have one question in the chat about the recording. And so if you do want a recording, please email me. My email address is on the resources. It's also at the end of this PowerPoint presentation. If you do want a recording, I can send it to you. But the slides are available as a PDF right now to open and save if you wish. Okay, so let me launch a poll here so I don't lose everyone. Okay, true or false? Financial aid only considers my income when determining need. So take a look at your screen and fill out this poll. Financial aid only considers my income when determining need. And it is kind of a tricky question. All right, a couple more seconds for this. Do they only consider my income? I'm gonna close the poll in 3, 2, 1. Okay, so I'm not going to share results, but I'm going to tell you the answer. So the answer is that it is false. Financial aid considers more than just your income. We're going to look at the different things. Certainly they consider your income. They also look at assets, and they look at your family size and dependency status. So we'll get into all of that information a little bit more when we look at the FAFSA. So the FAFSA for September 2021 has been open since October 1st. Now, if you're looking to go to school this fall, if you have not filled out the FAFSA yet, no time like the present. Do it as soon as possible. If you're looking for fall 2022 for school, maybe you are planning for an additional year, you have a junior in high school, then the FAFSA opens October 1st. So the recommendation with the FAFSA is that you get in as soon as possible, because there are certain monies, certain pots that are first come, first serve, which means, you know, the sooner you get in, the more money you may receive. However, it is not too late. And we will talk about, I think I have somewhere for you the dates. The deadline to fill out the FAFSA for the federal student aid is June 30th. So you do still have time, but the sooner the better. So what is the FAFSA? I haven't even told you what it stands for. The FAFSA is the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. And the FAFSA is the starting point for all financial aid. It will determine your family's need. It will help you get access to need-based financial aid, such as grants, federal student loans, federal work study, state grants and scholarships, institutional grants and scholarships, so coming directly from your school, and grants and scholarships from your other organization, which I have here. So cannot recommend enough, and this comes up again and again, everyone who is thinking about going to school should fill out the FAFSA. It is free. And even if you think, oh, I don't qualify for financial aid, maybe you don't qualify for some of the federal grants, but you're still going to want to see what the school is going to offer you. So the FAFSA, again, is the starting point. And you truly do not know until you fill it out what it's going to look like. So if you do want to access that federal work study, if you do want to access state grants and scholarships and grants from your school and other organizations, so many organizations look to the FAFSA. So really important. So we're going to focus, for the next little bit of this session on the FAFSA because it is so important. This is the starting point for everything financial aid, for everything paying for college. So here are the deadlines for the FAFSA. I mentioned the federal deadline is June 30th. Definitely going to want to check with your school to see what their deadline is for the FAFSA. And I believe the state of Pennsylvania FAFSA the deadline is May 1st. So we are coming up to that quickly. All right. So I'm going to show you a video from Federal Student Aid. Let me find where my video is. Sorry to stop the video. It looks like we're having a little bit of technical difficulties. I know one person says there's no sound, another one has a white screen. Can anybody else, all of you, put in the chat, were you able to see that video or no? Okay. So some of you are seeing it. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to finish the video. For those of you who cannot, it will be in the PDF in the PowerPoint. So you'll have access to this there. Okay, sorry about that. Let me finish sharing the video. Okay. Sorry to repeat, but honestly, it's a really, really useful video. It seems really basic, but it's got so many um, good sort of explanation of what we need to know. And I'm going to get into a few of these terms in just a second. Okay, so you fill out your FAFSA, and it seems like I have a little bit out of order because I do have the information you need to complete the FAFSA in a moment. You know what, let's look at this quickly. So in order to fill out the FAFSA, you do need to have your FSA account, your FSA ID. And this is something, the sooner you do it, the better. I personally have found that completing the FSA ID is one of the more annoying parts of the whole process. They do have to verify your identity when you create an FSA ID. So with the FAFSA, you are going to set up for each student, and if you are a dependent, if you are a high school student or under 24, we'll look at dependency in a moment, but if you are a student, dependent student, you will need an FSA ID. Your parent will also need an FSA ID. Both of you have to create your own. You cannot create one for someone else. So this is an important part. It's great to get it started. So say you're looking towards filling out that FAFSA on October 1st, do this in late September. It's going to take a couple of days for them to verify your information so that you can get into the system to make this happen. What else do you need to fill out the FAFSA? And this is for 21-22. So this was for this fall. You'll need your FSA account, social security number, and if you do not have a social security number or your child doesn't, but you meet eligibility criteria, you will need your alien registration number. You need your driver's license number if you have one, or state ID, 2019 tax records. So you use the prior year's income. I don't have current information on what are they going to do since everyone's income potentially has changed in the last year. I would check with studentaid.gov and see what they've said. But if things have not changed much, we're using 2019 tax records. We also want to take a look at untaxed income. This would be things like child support, interest income, records of any assets you have, savings accounts, and the list of schools you are interested in attending. So these are the 7 things. If you are confused about your dependency status, it can be confusing. I do have a link to help you figure that out too. And so there's a simple question and answer that you can do through studentaid.gov, and it will help you determine if you are dependent or not. All right, so I'm going to go back for a sec. Okay, so we fill out the FAFSA, and 3 days to 3 weeks later, you're going to get what is called the student aid report, assuming your FAFSA is complete. So in the upper right-hand corner, you will see the expected family contribution. So this is important because you want to make sure that your SAR, your student aid report, is accurate, because the student aid report determines your expected family contribution. What is the significance of the expected family contribution? These are mouthfuls. This is what the school looks at when it determines your financial need, and it determines how much aid it's going to give you. So the higher your expected family contribution, the less financial aid you will receive. So you want to check, and we'll look at next what goes into that EFC, that expected family contribution. So we're just making sure that this student aid report is accurate because we want it to make sense when it comes to the aid that we're going to receive. The student aid report also has something called a data release number, and this is an important number if you are making any changes to your FAFSA when you're talking to the school about your email address changes, mailing address, school code, housing plan, things like that. So this is a really important document that you will get 3 days to 3 weeks after your FAFSA. Okay, so how is your expected family contribution determined? And this is where there's a lot of confusion about what these are looking at, how you're assessed for financial aid, what you qualify for. So the FAFSA uses a formula looking at your parents' income if you're dependent, or your income if you are independent, your investments and other assets, as well as the number of people in your family and if any of them are also attending college. So if you are an independent student, if we're looking at income, 47% of the parent's income is assessed above a protected allowance. So there's a certain amount that they do not consider when it comes to determining your aid. So for an independent student, so say I'm an adult going to school, I have children, I have a family, in that case, my protected income, the income they don't assume I'm going to use towards school, is $42,000. So then above that, they'll be looking at 50% of the income. If I'm a dependent student, the income protection for a family of 4 is about $30,000 or so. They're going to consider more of that income. Now, the student themselves, so say this is a dependent high school student or younger student under 24, their income is protected up to $6,970. So if you have a part-time job and make more than that, then that's going to be considered in your expected family contribution that you will be able to contribute. Is this confusing or what here? So income is considered. The other thing that's considered are assets. And so parents' assets are looked at a fairly low rate of 5.64%, but it is not including retirement accounts, and it does not include your primary residence. So that's good news. They're not asking how much your house is worth, and they're not looking at your personal retirement accounts. Students' assets are assessed at a higher rate, and those are assessed at 20%. There is an exception or a point I want to make here, and it's that those 529s that I recommended before is that no matter if they're in the child's name or if they are owned by the parent, they're considered parental assets. So that means that the money in the 529 is fairly well protected from the way it impacts your expected family contribution and your aid. I'm going to give you an example because I don't think I'm making it very clear, but the example is if you save $25,000 in your child's 529, their aid would only be reduced by about $1,400. So the savings that you have in that 529, only a very small percentage of it is going to be considered as an asset when it comes to evaluating your federal aid. So really good in terms of still being a good option for saving. So protected allowance amount, someone asked to repeat for, and this is all available, and I do have links to all of these through the resources. Studentaid.gov is the answer for everything. Currently, parents' income, if you are a dependent student, a family of 4, the protected income allowance is $29,890. If you are an independent student, an adult going back to school, for example, a family of 4 is $42,200. That's protected allowance. And you can find that through studentaids.gov. So a 529, even if it is, so I have a question about potentially an adult with their own 529 account, that will be assessed at 5.64%. Still, like 90% sure. Let me look that up, actually. But the idea is that if the parent has this 529, it's going to be assessed at a lower rate. If it is a grandparent's 529, then it can be considered the student's income. So again, we get in the weeds, but I do have some information that can help you in the resource, and I can point that out at the end. Just going to mention quickly, there's something called a CSS profile. This might be certain schools, many private schools will ask that families fill out this additional profile, and it's a CSS profile. It's not free. So in addition to the FAFSA, school might use this, and it helps determine the institution aid, so how much money the school is going to give you. And a lot of times that ends up with potentially more aid received. Okay. So types of aid. Now, a lot of times we think about aid as free money, but certainly it's much more than just free money, unfortunately. So we have different types of aid. We have grants. Grants generally are need-based money without repayment. Wonderful. Next, we have scholarships. And these are merit or performance-based money without repayment. Also wonderful. Work study is need-based campus jobs, and the earnings go towards tuition fees, etc. And then federal loans are fixed, low interest rate money that must be repaid. So you're looking at the first three, and those are not repaid. And then, of course, loans are included in your financial aid. So what's the order to accept this? Well, first, scholarships and grants, right? That free money. Next, work study. Third, you're looking at federal student loans, then loans from the state or college, then private loans. So private loans are really the last resort when it's the list. And so, yeah, we'll talk a little more about federal student loans and why they are a better option. Definitely shop around, look for scholarships, grant opportunities, talk to teachers, friends, professionals about what grants and scholarships you might be eligible for, or if they know of any, maybe someone's job has them. I know Pfcu has a scholarship account for high school students. All right, so why federal loans first? And some people will come to me and say, does Pfcu have student loans? Well, we have private loans. So first thing, again, the starting point is the FAFSA, and the FAFSA is going to, if you qualify, help you get set up with federal loans. Why? Federal loans have lower interest rates. They have forbearance and deferment options. These are options to put the loans on hold. They have lower fees. They have fixed rates, so nothing's going to get much more expensive down the road. You can predict it. There are better loan forgiveness plans when it comes to federal loans. There are more repayment options, and this is really important, these repayment options. There are no prepayment penalties, and there are no required credit checks, which is worth mentioning. So when you fill out the FAFSA, you're getting these loans potentially, but they are not looking at your credit. Okay. So looking at the few types of loans, and I had a few questions about this, so let me take a look at these and then I can look at the questions afterwards. There are 3 types of federal student loans that we'll look at. So these might all be included in the offer, in your financial aid offer. So the types of federal student loans we've got, and this again is in the order that you want to accept them if they're offered to you. So first, looking at direct subsidized. And I always think subsidized is like, how am I being helped? So subsidized is the one where the government pays the interest during school and during your grace period. So these are loans that go to undergraduates with financial need. Then we have, and they're cheaper, essentially, because the government pays the interest during school and during the grace period. So if you borrow $3,000 in a subsidized loan at the beginning of the year, at the end of the year, that loan is still $3,000. There has been no interest added to it. Then we have direct unsubsidized loans. So unsubsidized is like not as much help, right? These are for undergraduates and graduate or professional degree students. So more people potentially eligible. And the borrower pays the interest. So you can pay the interest on these loans throughout the course of the year and keep them the same at the end. If you don't pay the interest on an unsubsidized loan, let me use the exact. The interest will accrue and be capitalized. That means the interest is added to the principal amount of the loan. So your loan is $3,000. The interest over the course of the year is $200. That's a completely made up number. So at the end, you have a loan for $3,200, and then it will continue to add from there, the interest. So that's unsubsidized. And then the direct plus loan, these are for graduate and professional degree students and parents of dependent undergraduate students. So these are the loans, the parent plus loans, and they do require a credit check. And they are federal. So there are limits to what students can qualify for with these federal loans. The rate for 21-22 school year is 2.75%. But there is a limit to what you can borrow. And now we looked at that expected family contribution. We looked at the ticket price of the school. If you're receiving the maximum number of grants, the maximum amount of loans that you can receive from the federal government, very often, and it doesn't come near, you still have an expected family contribution that is very low, then hopefully the school will pick up the difference. And so that's where that comes in, is the school looks at what's available to you and then hopefully will provide the difference to you. And we're gonna look at that next, okay? All right, so we did the FAFSA, it's all completed. We're starting to get the aid offers from the schools. It used to be they were called award letters, but we don't call them that anymore because we have to pay this money back, right? So it's kind of a misnomer. So we call them, they're called financial aid offers or financial aid package or financial aid statement. And this details what federal, state, or school aid you're going to receive. It details grants, loans, or work study. And you're going to use this offer to compare the cost of different colleges. And this is really important, and I'm going to give you a really good tool for this, but this is going to be the actual determination of how much your school is going to cost. So a little bit of the downside of this is that these are not standard. And I have a really good video I'm going to show, hopefully will work. I'm going to do, I'm going to show it and then stop it and then show it again, because I think I need to load it. So let's see how we do. All right, stopped it. I'm going to show it now. All right, that is enough of that video, but some really important points there is that there is not a standard. So, and you could see with Loyola, it was interesting. There was definitely a voiceover. I think they got some feedback from Loyola saying like, look, we did tell you. But the offer will look different. You want to see, you know, not just the total amount, but which of that is money that you have to pay back versus money that you do not need to pay back. And so it's important to know the difference between grants and loans and work study and things of that nature. So you want to read it carefully when you get your financial aid offer. See which type of aid they're offering. Is it grants, scholarship, loans? Really highly recommend that you compare the offers using a spreadsheet or online tracker to see what is the true cost to you. You can always appeal. So how do you appeal a student loan or your financial aid package? You write a letter. And so I have a link for a useful NerdWallet article that sort of gives you the basics of how to appeal. Maybe you don't agree with what the school did. There's a really, the process is recommended. And so, you know, checking out that link will be great. You can say, hey, I deserve more money and this is why. What can you do to help me? How do you decide which student loans to accept? So this is the advice from studentaid.gov, from federal student aid. They said, borrow only what you need. And I'm gonna, you know, I have this whole quote up for a reason. Borrow only what you need. If your living expenses are not going to be as high as the amount estimated by your school, you have the right to turn down the loan or to request a lower loan amount. You don't have to take all the money they're offering you, certainly when it comes to loans. In the aid offer, your school will tell you how to do this. Determining how much loan money to accept, make a list of your college and living expenses and the resources you'll have available to pay them. So basically make a budget. And there is a form here. It's another tool that I like from the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau to help you create that budget to figure out. Thank you for the feedback. I'm not sharing my screen. There we go. Okay. Thank you all. I need an assistant. But I don't, because you're all helping. Okay, great. So so make a list of the college expenses, make a budget. Again, link in the slide to a budget. And I think this is from studentaid.gov, to take a look at that and to see, you know, what are your expenses going to be? What do you need? And what should you borrow then? There might be additional steps. So when you get those letters from the school, take a good look at them and make sure you're following the directions to see, is there something you want to receive? Make sure you're signing up the correct way. So you got to pay attention to all that. Okay, we did it. And again, I will share those resources. We have a couple of minutes left. I can stick around if people are able to answer additional questions. In the meantime, we're looking at a few next steps. Save and plan for those indirect expenses. Complete the FAFSA early, now, if you haven't, for this coming fall, or October 1st, if you're thinking the future. The FAFSA sends the student aid report to the schools that you choose. So you're going to have the list of schools on your FAFSA, and it's going to go directly to those schools. And then examine and compare your financial aid offer letters to find the right fit. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to open one of the resource that I gave you. If you do have questions, you can pop it in the chat. If you asked one early on that I didn't get to, please write it in again if you can. But I want to show you a really great tool for the financial aid offer, because this is really important this this time of year, this is what we need to be thinking about and working on. So, all right. Okay, so you can see this is the resources. And on here, we've got indirect costs at college and nasty surprises. So some of the ways you can help prepare for them. That net price calculator, so you can find out the true cost at different schools. And that tuition tracker, so that will look at your income and your family size and help you figure out how much the school will cost. Just a collection of scholarship and grant information. And these are the 10 best sites to look for scholarships. So a great resource to get that free money. My biggest recommendation and one of my bigger regrets is that I didn't apply for as many scholarships as I should have. And I didn't toot my own horn enough, if I may say. I thought I needed to be modest when that's not at all what scholarships are about. So you should sing your own praises constantly. Tell everyone why you deserve to get this scholarship and how wonderful you are. They'll never know unless you tell them. Some really good information, federal student loan basics. And federal versus private loans, if you're looking at both of those. The financial aid offer comparison tools, and this is what I was just mentioning. There are two options from the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. They will give you, sort of walk you through with this tool. Oh, that's not it. This is also great that you can look at and really populate your information from your offer letter to say, this is the state I live in, this is my school, this is all the information. So this is going to sort of populate and create that comparison for you. There's also another tool from the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which doesn't seem to be opening at the moment. But that's another great option to take you step by step through the comparison of what these schools are offering you. So I really recommend doing those if you do have those offer letters or when you get those offer letters so you can see. And then just some additional, this is too much information. However, if you want more information, I have some good resources to find it. How to get more financial aid for college, strategies for increasing financial aid for college, calculating, you really want to get the details of how do they get that EFC, that expected family contribution. You can find that out. Different assets and how they affect your financial aid eligibility. How to write that financial aid appeal letter. Creating your budget for college and accepting financial aid. So these are all, they're not all going to be for you, but check out the resources that are applicable to you and ignore the rest. Okay, I'm going to take a look at the questions. Any of you who are done, so essentially we're done with the content. And I'll say again, if you want a recording, I'll put my email address up. Let's see, my email address is here. So you can email me if you want a recording. Otherwise, under the handouts in the dashboard, open those PDFs and you can save them. If you are signing off now and don't want to stick around for any questions, thank you so much for attending. Really appreciate it. Check out some of my other webinars. They're not so specific to specific areas, a little more general personal finance. There will be a survey, so I just ask, this helps me plan other webinars, other events that we're doing, to please complete the survey. It will pop up when you exit out of the webinar. So For those of you leaving, thank you again for attending. Please fill out that survey. It will pop up after you X out. And then for anyone who wants to stick around for a minute or two, I'm happy to answer questions too. And I will put my email in the chat box.